Turns out Alex Bregman's not getting $40 million a year to play second base. Yes, welcome on into First Pitch on a special Valentine's Day edition because we love baseball here. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Troy Brock, Troy B Baseball on the Twitter machine. We're going to get to the Kansas City Royals, kind of wrapping up some of our, not wrapping up, but getting into our AL Central previews with the Royals. We're going to get to whatever Marcus Stroman's up to and a couple of notable minor league signings. But first, we did get some financial details on both Clayton Kershaw and Alex Bregman. And you may remember yesterday when the show started, I expressed a lot of disbelief that Alex Bregman was going to make $40 million a year to play third base. It turns out he's not. There is deferred money in there. I can't believe the Dodgers are still getting away with this. There is deferred money in there. And so the deferred money knocks the present value of the deal from $120 million to $90 million. On the luxury tax, Bregman will count $31.7 million, which is still a lot of money, but it's not $120 million every single year. So does this make you feel, I guess, better about how much he's getting paid, or is it still $30 million for a second baseman is still nuts?
Yeah, I still think that's pretty crazy, especially for a guy that we talked about it yesterday. He hasn't played second base, and while I do believe he'll be okay, it's not just that he hasn't ever played second base in Major League Baseball. It's also that he's 30 and he's already shown regression from the height of his career. So I think it's still a lot of money to be paying Alex Bregman and a second baseman just in general.
Yeah, the complete structure of this here. It's just like it's choking Troy up here. $5 million signing bonus, $35 million salary in 25, and then $40 million salary in the final 2 years. But again, the deferrals and things like that, this is the equivalent of him getting $31.7 million a year. Still a lot, obviously, for any dude to play second base. And like Troy said, a guy who's never played that position before. But sure, whatever. Okay, fine. Yeah, he has an opt-out. He may only be there a year. It may not even matter. They may trade, I feel like you don't necessarily trade away a guy like a Casas and move Raffy to first base if you think that that Bregman could opt out after, I think he can opt out after each of the first 2 seasons, so you don't necessarily do that there. I do think it's interesting, though, because this front office group has been pretty serious about signing guys to extensions. And when you kind of look at some of this, they went and they gave extensions. Brayan Bello got one after a year of service time. Ceddanne Rafaela got one after, service time. And there's some cases to make early extension offers to like Roman Anthony, to make early extension offers to Marcelo Meyer, some of your top prospects, Jarren Duran, who just had an amazing year. You just settled with an arbitration. But you can't really do anything at first base with Tristan Casas until you figure out third base. Because if you're moving Raffy to first, and again, defensively, Raffy is not good. If you move him to first, that means you would be signing Casas and locking him in as a DH. And I assume they're going to take that into account in the extension. He probably wants it as a first baseman. They probably would like it as a DH. So still some moving parts here. I do think you have to see some of these prospects come up first. But in the meantime, just interesting how much of that contract is deferred, where the total value goes from 120 until like $90 million.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the odd man out in all of this is going to be Masataka Yoshida, because they've already kind of expressed that they want to move on from him, and he's got 3 years left on his deal at $18.6 million a year in each year. So it's going to be hard to move on from that contract just because he hasn't really lived up to expectations or 18 points. Not that he's bad, he's just not really. It's not really. He's not really an $18.6 million a year player.
he's also not the profile of a DH. Like, he has 248 career games in the majors because he got hurt last year, 25 home runs. Like, he's not the massive slugger. Now, he's hit 285. He is a useful player. He's hit 285. He's got 10 steals in that same time frame. So he's not just completely useless on the base paths. He claims he can still play defense. His first year was tough coming over from Japan. That happens a lot. But you're in a situation where they have so many outfielders, they can't play him in the field to try and like help him build that, like rebuild that reputation to make him attractive in a trade. It's a really no-win scenario here, and they're going to have to eat some money to move him.
Now, I actually thought about this while you were talking. Everybody's talked about moving Tristan Casas as part of a deal with the Mariners to bring in another pitcher. What if they moved Masataka Yoshida to the Mariners and he played first base for the Mariners? Because when he did play left field, he had -8 outs above average in 23. And that was the only position he has played defensively in Major League Baseball. And so what if they moved him to first base in Seattle and he was part of a return for Luis Castillo? I think the Red Sox would have to eat some of the money.
Right.
But
a lot of the money because it's Seattle and they cry poverty.
Right.
I think one of the issues you have there is he's like 5'8". Like, he's not the stature of a typical first baseman. We've had the same conversation on the Braves side about Ozzie Albies. Like, his arm is one of the worst arms in all of baseball, not just at second base, all of baseball. But you can't move him to first because he's listed at 5'8", and I think he's shorter than that. And so it's like, where do you put him? The arm's too weak for the outfield. Yoshida's in a situation of he's only ever played the outfield all his time in Japan. He only played the outfield. I don't necessarily know if he could play first base. Just from a frame perspective, you lose the ability to make the stretches and all of that. But, I mean, maybe he can play the outfield for the Mariners. I mean, they have plenty of options, right? They have guys out there. They did, obviously they have Julio Rodriguez. They did give a deal to Victor Robles, who, if he rebounded, it's not a bad deal. If he did, in fact, rebound after getting cut. The third guy is Randy Arozarena, who was bad defensively last year at the age of 30 or 29 to 30, just kind of fell off a cliff. You could maybe bring him in as, like, if Robles struggles, Yoshida can slot into the field in like left field or something, or right field. If Robles is good, he can maybe rotate with Mitch Haniger at DH. I mean, there's possibilities here. Maybe Randy wants to play first. I don't know. There's Yoshida's really the man that they need to move, and he's the one that just feels like they're not going to be able to.
Yeah, that contract's going to hold them back a lot with that, especially if they don't want to eat most of the money or package a high-end prospect with him. Because I don't think they're going to move on from Roman Anthony or Marcelo Meyer like they did from Kyle Teal. I think they'd be kind of crazy to do that with how good everybody expects those two to be. But they'd have to eat a lot of that money or give one of those prospects up if they don't eat that money.
Yeah. All right, some of the other money that we saw, Clayton Kershaw's officially now been re-signed by the Dodgers. They put River Ryan, the right-hander who had Tommy John, on the 60-day IL for the move. Kershaw indicated he's going to go to the 60-day IL. He probably won't be back until sometime in May. And that actually impacts the contract. He's guaranteed $7.5 million. But there's a bunch of both there's incentives both for starts and for active roster bonuses, right? So the deal, if he starts at least 16 games and stays healthy for about half the season, the deal can double from 7.5, can more than double to $16 million. He gets $1 million bonus at each of starts 13, 14, 15, 16. And then he gets $2.5 million when he hits 30 days on the active roster. He gets another $1 million at 60 days and another $1 million at 90. So combination of starts and being healthy on the active roster can get him up to $16 million. I didn't give you a heads up I'm going to ask this, but top of your head, what's the final salary amount for Clayton Kershaw in 2025?
Ooh, I think that he'll he'll probably hit the 90 days on the active roster, even though he's probably not going to be back until May. I'm going to say he gets 13-5.
Oh man, I was thinking 13 as I asked that question. Okay, yeah. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact that they're expected to use a 6-man rotation all year. You're adding in all of these other options like Ohtani coming back, they think sometime in May as well, and things like that. But for some reason, I just have Kersh making around $13 million. It's something where he's been dealing with so many injuries, right, in his career. Or I guess in the last couple of years, we didn't really have a lot of clarity on what was going on and his timeline for this year. He said in November he was having surgery on his lower left leg. There was a bone spur in his big toe, which sounds awful. He had a ruptured plantar plate. He had a torn meniscus in his knee, which is all just nuts to hear all at the same time. And so they start a little earlier because they have the Tokyo series against the Cubs, right?
Yeah.
But 60-day IL, it's going to be at least, mid to late May. I just feel like just all the stuff going on, I don't know if they're going to have him that much. He hasn't hit 132 innings since 2019.
Wow.
Now, he did have 131 in 2023, but he was not the same guy down the stretch. He needed shoulder surgery that offseason. He made 7 starts last year, went back on the IL, only had like 30 innings. 13 million seems like the most you're going to possibly see out of Kersh this year.
Yeah, for sure. It sucks that he's had to deal with these injuries because he's one of the greats in the history of the sport to take the mound, and just what he's done throughout his career. I'm honestly surprised he didn't hang it up, especially after you listed off all those injuries. He's got his leg's about to fall off. It sounds like he seems like he shares a shin with Kyle Tucker, maybe.
This happens a lot because people kind of think about the recency bias and everything. But I want folks to remember, just real quick before we move on, how good Clayton Kershaw was. Debuted in 2008 at the age of 20. In his career, he's won an MVP, which as a starting pitcher is hard to do. He's won a Triple Crown. He's won 3 Cy Youngs. He's won the ERA title 5 times. He's been MLB Player of the Year. He won a Gold Glove. He's been an All-Star 10 times. He won the 2020 World Series. He technically won a World Series last year, even though I don't think he was even on the postseason roster. So, it's not lit. He didn't play in it, but obviously he was still part of the organization there. He is a no doubt Hall of Famer. He's going to make the Hall of Fame. I don't know if it'll be first ballot because the writers are weird. But, and he won the Roberto Clemente Humanitarian Award. Like, he's won just about literally everything you can win in the game of baseball. I'm also kind of surprised he didn't hang it up. But I feel like Kersh wants to go out on his terms versus the game being taken away from him. So, reminder that Clayton Kershaw, like his career ERA, even after all of these struggles recently, is 2.50. Wow. It is the lowest career ERA for any active major leaguer in baseball. His home run rate in his career, 0.7 per 9 innings, is the active career leader in MLB. His hits rate, 6.9 per 9 innings, is the active major league career leader. Like, he leads all major leaguers. ERA plus 156 for his career. Active leader in all of MLB. There's more shutouts. He has 15 career shutouts. He has the most career shutouts of any pitcher in MLB still active. Winning percentage, 693. That is the active career leader. Like, Clayton Kershaw's, people think he's just like awful. He is one of the greatest pitchers in baseball history. His only year of his career with a negative WAR was 2024. That's it.
Yeah. He's
always been positive, and he had 8.1 WAR in 2013. Like, he's been dominant in his career.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that, and just to put all of that into a little bit more perspective, the some of the pitchers that have also pitched and are still active include Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, and guys like that. And Clayton Kershaw still has them beat in all of those different statistics for their careers. And I would be more mad at the BBWAA if he was not a first ballot Hall of Famer than everyone was with Ichiro or
not
other
being
guys,
unanimous. Yeah.
Not being unanimous. Yeah. Because that's just, Clayton Kershaw is one of the best of all time.
Here is the wildest thing to me. When you factor in he had 30 innings last year, his 162 game average for his career. This is his average season in his career, okay? 17-7 with a 2.50 ERA across 34 starts. 2 of them would have been complete games. 1 of them would have been a shutout. Granted, a lot of those were clustered earlier in his career, but still. His 162 game average for his career is 217 innings pitched with 234 strikeouts in that 217 innings. Like, his average season would have been the most dominant season last year of any pitcher. It's just, don't forget how good Clayton Kershaw is just because he's been bad in the postseason recently, and his 24 was disappointing.
How far away is he from 3,000 strikeouts? You have it pulled up.
Yeah, he's got 2,968. He should pass it this year.
Yeah.
If he makes 10 starts, like, there's no way he doesn't get 32 strikeouts in probably less than 10 starts.
Well, yeah, he could probably do that in 5 or 6 starts.
If he's on with that curveball, yeah, he could totally do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick, a couple minor league signings just of note. I thought it was interesting, and just signings in general. Cal Quantrill, 1-year deal to the Miami Marlins, $3.5 million, more incentives. Joey Gallo, deal with the Chicago White Sox. That's one of those, like, zero risk here for them. If he does anything, great. If he's bad, they just cut him. Who cares? Kenley Jansen went to the Angels. I don't know if we talked about that or not when it happened. But just some interesting little signings there. But I do want to talk about a guy that is making a lot of money, unlike those guys, but it's not in camp. Marcus Stroman showed up, took his physical, and then has not been with the team for the last 2 days of workouts. He's not holding out per SNY's Andy Martino, but he's just waiting until the mandatory reporting date of February 22nd to show up. All of the workouts and practices so far have been voluntary or optional. So, is this because they're trying to trade him? Do you think he's just trying to help with health? Or do you think he's just throwing a fit because it's Marcus Stroman and he throws a fit randomly?
I think it's the first and the third, honestly, because
I don't think he blocked me on. I don't think I'm blocked by him on Twitter anymore. I don't know if Twitter changed that or if he had a change of heart and said I need to hear what this guy has to say about me.
That's probably what it was. He probably heard your Baltimore Orioles, that clip when Jackson Holiday debuted, and that's
he's like, I gotta have that guy. Yeah, let me see.
But
no, I'm not blocked by Marcus Stroman anymore. Let's go, baby. things are definitely turning around for Lindsay. Let's go.
Hey, give it time. He'll block the show. That's because. But no, I do think that it's both because they're trying to trade him and he just likes to throw fits randomly. Because when you look at his track record over the years, he's one of the most controversial guys in baseball. Like he treats baseball like a football or basketball player treats their sports, and it's insane. And I honestly, because he's nowhere near good enough to act the way that he does, I don't understand why any team continues to sign him to major league deals and pay him millions of dollars to be a little whiny baby. But he unfollowed the Yankees on Instagram earlier in the offseason, and the New York Post Sports talked about it with Aaron Boone. And Aaron Boone, of course, being Aaron Boone's like, it was an accident. He didn't do that on purpose. He pushed 4 buttons accidentally. Yeah. But it's and now he's not showing up. And his agent told the team before he participated in his physical, his agent told the team, oh yeah, he doesn't have to show up until February 22nd. The mandatory show up date. And so it's just I'm not a fan of Marcus Stroman. I don't know if I've made that clear yet or not, but
I wasn't sure. Thanks for clarifying. Wasn't sure on that.
But yeah, I don't like anything he's ever done, and I think that this is just another. I'm a little baby, and I don't want to be traded because
Another data point in the whole thing of Marcus Stroman being, yeah. All right. Well, here's the quote from Aaron Boone. They asked him about it at workouts the other day. He said, obviously, I want all of our players here, clearly. That said, I'm comfortable with where he's at physically and mentally. He's a prideful player. This is a guy that's had a great career. Doubt. It's a little bit of an awkward situation, obviously. So, of course, I want him here. I'm trying to keep nudging him to get him here. But again, you also have to respect the fact that this is something that players are allowed to do. There's a mandatory date. So they want him there, but they know they have no leverage here. And here's the thing. I think the hardest thing with Marcus Stroman here, you kind of touched on it. He's not good enough to be a headache. Like, there's guys, you see this a lot with wide receivers in the NFL. Like, they're all the best ones are just divas. But when they're really good, you put up with it. Garrett Cole, he would never do it, but he's a dude who could like wait to show up until the 22nd. You're like, well, it's fine. He's gonna be good enough for us in the regular season. We don't have to like it, but we can live with it. Marcus Stroman's not good enough for that. And the thing that's the worst for Stroman on this is the fans already have a poor impression of him, because I went and looked at what he did at home last year. His ERA for the year was a 4.31, but at home, he pitched to a 5.31 ERA, and of his 19 home runs he gave up last year, 15 were in Yankee Stadium. Like, on the road, Marcus Stroman wasn't a bad pitcher, 3.09 ERA, but in Yankee Stadium, he got blasted. So the fans already probably aren't liking him that much, and then this doesn't necessarily help. It feels like he's going to have to get traded if you don't want him to get booed in Yankee Stadium every time he comes out to pitch.
Yeah, and also, you know, Fangraphs has him projected as their sixth starter if they go with a 6-man rotation. So he's the odd man out anyway. The trade rumors are founded, and the way that he acts, it's that's not very representative of how the Yankees want to be looked at as how they want their players to act in the public. And he's in town. He is in Tampa, just hanging out in Tampa. And he's just like, nah, I'm not going to go to work. I'll hang out around work and I'll wave at guys as they go into camp because, but I'm just going to hang out over here. I'm going to go party. But it's just, I don't get it, man. And I don't know.
Wild. Absolutely wild. All right. So kind of wrapping up our, not wrapping up, but more of our division preview here, talking about the Central. The Kansas City Royals. I was high on the Kansas City Royals last year. I just did my predictions on the IBWAA site, right? The Internet Baseball Writers Association. And I had the Royals winning this division. And I think it's because Bobby Witt Jr. could be the guy who ends up winning MVP. Start off with the lineup. Do we think that this lineup, as currently constructed, can win the division with this lineup?
Oh yeah, I think so. They came close last year. They were just a handful of games out from the Cleveland Guardians last year, and the Cleveland Guardians took a step back, and the Kansas City Royals added Jonathan India, which makes the top of their lineup even better. I'm very high on Jonathan India, by the way. But no, he's got the best walk. He's projected to have the best walk rate on the team and one of the best strikeout rates, and it's going to set the table nicely for Bobby Witt Jr. and Vinny Pasquantino and Salvador Perez to score some runs early in ball games.
If I remember the stat right from last year, Bobby Witt Jr. had the most plate appearances of anybody in baseball with nobody on base in front of him. Right. Michael Garcia led off a lot of the year, really kind of struggled. So getting India, I think, is huge for this team's overall run production. And it's something, I mean, Bobby Witt Jr. was worth 10 WAR last year by himself. But like, no, Salvador Perez was like 3, and nobody else on the roster was more than like 1.5. No. Nobody else in the lineup was worth more than 1.5. I do think the issue you have is Fangraphs right now has Michael Massey still at second base and India is the DH. And I do think the issue you have here is, one, I don't love your corner outfield options. Hunter Renfroe and MJ Melendez have been too inconsistent. And by doing that, by having India at DH and Massey at second, you then enter a situation where, Freddie Fermin behind the plate is not a bad catcher. Salvador Perez is coming up on his age 35 season. You're going to have to monitor his workload. He got a full season of plate appearances last year because he caught, but he DH'd, and he played some first base. And if you install India as the DH, you're going to have an issue. And I think I've seen some reports this offseason about Massey and or India both working a little bit in the outfield, kind of similar to what the Reds did with Spencer Steer. They moved Spencer Steer out to left field. He wasn't great out there, but he was hitting, and that's what they needed was the offense. So I do think that's one of the things you need to fix is if you can get either India or Massey to left field and the other one at second base so that your DH spot can be open on certain days for Salvi or for some of these other guys to kind of take a rest. I think that goes a long way towards making this lineup as a whole a little bit more dangerous on a day-to-day basis and not just when Salvi's behind the plate.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, Freddie Fermin is a very good backup catcher, and he's going to get a lot.
He was almost 2 WAR last year as a backup.
Yeah, and he's gonna be pretty close to that, if not surpass that again this year, because of how much they want Salvador Perez in the lineup and how little he needs to be catching at almost 35 years old. And so but yeah, I agree. They definitely need some help in the outfield. And I think Jonathan India would be a good help out there. It feels like he have decent range for the outfield, and so I'm very, as far as the American League Central goes in a vacuum, I am very high on this lineup and their chances in that division.
Yeah, kind of pulling some of the Jonathan India numbers. I don't think he's ever played in the outfield. I'm trying to look here, going back to his amateur time. It's always been second base, third base, shortstop, and stuff like that. But from a physical perspective, the arm is not great at all, right? Like 9th percentile arm strength. But his sprint speed's like 68th percentile. He was above average on range. So like he's a dude that can has the physical tools to play left field. He doesn't have the arm for right, but he has the physical tools for left field. So you have to think you could do some sort of timeshare with an MJ Melendez thing out there. We'll kind of see how that goes. If I remember right, I have not looked this up. If I remember right, Melendez has some platoon issues in his career, like lefties versus righties. So you can maybe put him into a timeshare. Let me see. 217 against righties, 234 against lefties. But OPS is higher against righties. Okay, now I'm officially confused on MJ Melendez. Whatever. It's fine. He can also play some right field too. I know Hunter Renfroe, like Melendez has a good arm, so he can play some right field too. The pitching staff. Cole Reagans, Seth Lugo. Both of these guys were almost 5 WAR last year. And then you got Michael Wacha, Michael Lorenzen, Chris Bubik, 1 through 5. Again, according to Fangraphs. I feel like it's good enough, especially when you consider the 40-man roster has another 3 guys who have already debuted in Alec Marsh and Daniel Lynch and Jonathan Bolin, and some 40-man prospects like Noah Cameron and stuff. Like, I feel like they have enough. The question's just how many of these guys will still be healthy when the postseason gets here.
Yeah, for sure. And it's for me, another question is if those guys can repeat what they did last year, because especially if you look at guys like Seth Lugo, he put up a 5.3 WAR last year. He had only put up a WAR above 2 twice previously in his career, and that was in 2018 and 2019 when he was mostly a reliever for the New York Mets. And so it's if they can repeat that, then yeah, they've got a very good chance of going pretty far in the division and the playoffs. But it's just a question of if they can. I don't think Cole Reagans will have an issue repeating that. He's only 27, but Seth Lugo's approaching 36, and so it's can they repeat the outstanding years that they had in 2024?
A funny thing for me on Seth Lugo is if you ever go to his StatCast, he threw 9 different pitches last year. Wow. It is nuts. He threw he threw 9 pitches last year. And like all but one of them were at least 4% usage, right? Like 4-seamer was his main pitch. He had a sinker as well. So that's coming up on close to half of his total pitches or fastballs. Curveball and a slurve, slider and a cutter and a sweeper. And then he had a changeup and a split finger. Like it's nuts. And he's one of those, I call him kitchen sink guys. As recently as 2022, he was a 5-pitch pitcher and his changeup was like 1% usage, 2% usage. And it's in 23 and 24 is when he added all of these pitches. And to me, I just love the idea of this dude, you're going to go to the plate. You know you'll get some sort of fastball, and it could be any one of like 4 different breaking balls and 2 different off-speed pitches at any given time. And he graded out really well on everything except for the off-speeds. Like fastball run value, 94th percentile. Breaking ball run value, 99th percentile. Now he's throwing a lot of them. But it's just like the kitchen sink guys like that, I think it's totally fun. And a lot of the guys that I like a lot, Max Fried was like this, Peter Schwellenbach with the Braves is like this. They throw 5 or 6, but 9 pitches is just wild. And it makes it a fun watch, honestly. You can just play a game like, hey, what's going to come next? You just don't know. You get to guess. It's fun.
Oh, yeah. So that game's a lot more fun than guys like Spencer Strider, where your options are
fastball, slider, maybe a curveball. That's it. That's all you got.
Yeah.
All right. Bullpen here. They traded for Lucas Erceg and Hunter Harvey last year to kind of reinforce this pin down the stretch. Those guys were really good. They're keeping them. They also signed Carlos Estevez, who you know pretty well.
Yeah.
In the offseason. So co-closers of Carlos Estevez, Lucas Erceg, and then set up mid Hunter Harvey. You can probably put John Schreiber and Angel Zerpa in there a little bit. The vibes on this pin are okay, right?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that we talked about the theme across these team previews is 2 strengths and a weakness, and for the Royals, it seems like while their pin isn't as weak as some other teams we've looked at this in these previews, it is the weakness between their rotation and their offense and their bullpen, especially with Carlos Estevez as the closer.
Yeah, I mean he's not been the most consistent in his career. I guess we'll put it that way. But it's still a nice little kind of buy low. They didn't pay stupid prices for him. But I don't hate this pin, honestly. And I do think that these Royals, if I'm picking somebody to win the division, I've got the Royals. I think the offense is as good as you're going to get in that ballpark, right? Like Vinny Pasquantino's more of a contact than a power hitter, but that ballpark doesn't do him any favors. He's never going to win a home run title in there. But whenever you have Bobby Witt Jr., who can put up 10 WAR in a season, and when you get a guy in front of him and Jonathan India who can get on a ton, like this 1 through 4, I would put up with a lot of other teams 1 through 4s. Like it's really not bad. And the question's just, can they get enough out of the back couple guys? And really the outfield corners are the weakness to me on the lineup. But the lineup's still overall strength. The bullpen's good enough. I think the rotation has enough pieces. I like the Royals this year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I agree. I think the Royals will win the division this year, take a big step from what they did in 2024. And I'm with you. I like the lineup a lot, especially for that ballpark, and especially with Bobby Witt Jr., who MLB Network named the 4th best shortstop in baseball, but the 3rd best player overall. So, it's the sports namesake network. They're making all of the sense.
The Shredder is on one this offseason. It's been so bad. These rankings have been so awful all offseason. The Shredder's been the worst. Let us know what you think. Do you think the Royals are decent? No. Tell us kind of your thoughts. In the meantime, you're listening on audio. Do us a favor. Leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Also, leave us a 5-star review. I love words of affirmation. Until next time, this has been First Pitch.